finally here. Spooks and spookettes, ladies and gentlemen, compadres and nemesis. My review of the brand new Godzilla movie. Are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Out of the doorway the bullets rip. To the sound of the beat, look out! Sorry, I get a little loopy when I'm tired. I stayed up pretty late at the movie theater watching this movie. And simply put, it is the greatest film ever made by human beings. Okay, so that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it was still a really good movie. But before I go into a long rant of why I think it was an awesome movie, I'm going to get out of the way a few disappointments and some concerns that I have about the movie, and then ultimately I'll start singing its praises. Disappointments. Number one, I felt that the movie used too much CGI. You see, for a traditional Godzilla fan, it's a little bit of a letdown that they didn't use any scale models of sets or any guys dressed up in monster suits running around and fighting each other. A little bit of a disappointment there. Number two, just a tad bit too much focus on the whole Mutos plot line. The movie is called Godzilla, not Mutos. Not even Godzilla vs. Mutos, even though that would have been a really cool title. The film is called Godzilla. Still, just a little too much. And thirdly, Bryan Cranston wasn't in the movie that much. I mean, collectively, he was probably in the movie for maybe 30 minutes. Now, folks, just to put it simply, Bryan Cranston is the man. Okay? I sort of have a man crush on Bryan Cranston. Took that one a little too far. But he is awesome. He's a fantastic actor. But, other than that, this movie was great. If I should put it in a cliche, I'd say that this movie was a... Well, I'll get to that in just a minute. But, anyway... Oh, you know what? I just had this thought. You know, Bryan Cranston, he wasn't in the movie that much, and I kind of wish he was, because that would mean that if he had a bigger role in the movie, well, I kind of think that the ending of the movie, it should have been Heisenberg taking down all of the monsters. You mess with the wrong kingpin, Godzilla. I'm gonna take you down with my blue crystal meth. Okay, I actually watched this show, so it probably would have been something more like this. Mutos. I am the danger. Here. Eat a bowl of ricin. It's actually a bowl of fake fruit. So, where do I begin to review the greatest movie ever made? Well, let's start with the cinematography. There's some very good camera work. Of course, I love the whole when the soldiers are dropping from the sky and, you know, they land with the flares. I thought that was a really cool shot. Of course, the shots of Godzilla and the monsters are awesome. And there was this one shot in the movie, though. It's not in any of the trailers. And you'll see what I mean when you actually watch the movie. Where Elizabeth Olsen's character is saying goodbye to her son. And then she gets out of the bus doors close, and the camera just stays there at the door. And the bus keeps moving and you can see everything passing by. I thought it was an interesting shot. It stuck out in my mind. The special effects, they were very good. And even though I'm not a huge fan of CGI, the CGI, it was good CGI. It wasn't bad. Godzilla did look cool, and so did the Mutos, even though I kind of wish that, you know, it was a guy in a suit, you know, guys in giant monster suits fighting each other, but it didn't look bad, actually. The acting was very good. The script was good, the dialogue and the good cast, the acting, the chemistry, it was all there. It really brought out the movie. Of course, I felt that this movie was, I was going to say this earlier, I interrupted myself. I think director Gareth Edwards and screenwriter Mark Bornstein, they made a love letter to Godzilla fans. They were basically saying in this movie, hey, we're sorry that Hollywood screwed Godzilla up back in 1998. Here's what we have for you. And if you watch the movie, you can notice that there's some winks at the Godzilla fans watching at this movie. For instance, there's this scene in the battle between Godzilla and the male Mutos in San Francisco. The male Mutos is about to make an epic aerial dive right at Godzilla, and then all of a sudden Godzilla whips his tail, and then boom! Knocks the Mutos into a building. Stuff like that was quite common in Godzilla movies made back in the 60s and the 70s. Also, if you watch the ending, I can't really give you a whole lot away, but if you watch the ending, you'll say to yourself, ha, I get it. It's like the director, he whispers in your ear, hey, I love you, and so does Godzilla. Actually, the director's British, so it would sound more like, hello, I love you, and Godzilla, he loves you too, mate. Yeah, something like that. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but Ken Watanabe's character, who was actually really more of the lead role, well, besides Aaron Taylor Johnston, excuse me, and Elizabeth Olsen, his character is Dr. Serizawa. And if you pay attention, Serizawa is the name of the scientist who kills Godzilla in Gojira 60 years earlier. Isn't that clever? There is one concern I have about this movie, and it's, in a way, it's also the reason why I love this movie so much. The trailers are very misleading about this movie. See, they sort of construct this narrative that Bryan Cranston is grieving over his wife, which he does in the movie, and that he has figured out that there is a conspiracy hiding the identity of Godzilla, and then Ken Watanabe's character knows the secret of Godzilla. Godzilla gets loose, starts rampaging through the world, and then the soldiers are coming in and they're trying to stop him, and then somehow the Mutos get in the fray. But that's not exactly what happens here. The story, well, like I said, Bryan Cranston is grieving over his wife. And by the way, I love what they did with his character, because he's kind of like frozen in his moment in time whenever his wife died. But anyway, he is grieving over his wife, and he is investigating something. However, what he's investigating is actually the Mutos. The Mutos were the ones who were responsible for his wife's death, in a sense. And then, when the Mutos emerge and start wreaking havoc, it's Godzilla who jumps into the fray. And Godzilla is the good guy. And of course, if you are a diehard Godzilla fan, that makes sense, because in most of Godzilla's movies, Godzilla is either the good guy, or he is the lesser of two evils. Now, I love that. However, I'm kind of worried about how that would reach to non-diehard Godzilla fans. You see, when I went to go watch the movie, I overheard a couple of girls talking to themselves. They liked the movie overall, but they had to admit that Godzilla being the hero, it kind of threw them off a little bit. But then again, I could be totally wrong, and sometimes I am from time to time, but not really. It could transcend and be one for the ages. Now, there's going to be a lot of disagreements between myself and other hardliner Godzilla fans. Some will say that this movie wasn't as great as the originals, but I really didn't go into this movie with expectations thinking that it was going to surpass any of the original ones. The original Godzilla movies set the standard, And even though this movie was different and it told its own story and it told its own unique story, of course it's not going to be as great as the original Godzilla's. But the people who made this movie, you could tell that they loved Godzilla. And they loved the art of filmmaking to the point where they wanted to make their own original story while staying true to the Godzilla fans that were watching the movie. And if nothing else, I think we can all agree that this Godzilla movie was way better than the Matthew Broderick one. And on that note, I will leave it at that. Thank you for watching Godzillathon, and thank you for watching this review. Be sure to join me next week for part 1 of my interview with the writer and director of The Lashman, Cameron McCaslin. Be sure to watch part 1 next week, part 2 the week after that, and then the week after that, be sure to stay tuned in for my review of his film, The Lashman. But until then, as far as things go when things go bump in the night, there are such things.